For most of the 20th century, there was a clear social contract in many wealthy countries. Citizens paid higher taxes, and in return they received better lives. Governments built infrastructure, provided health care, invested in education, and ensured that economic growth translated into rising living standards for the majority of people. High taxes were not popular, but they were tolerated because people could see the results. Roads improved, schools expanded, and each generation lived better than the last. But today, that relationship has quietly broken down. Across much of the developed world, taxes are higher than ever. Income taxes, payroll taxes, value-added taxes, and property taxes now take a larger share of people's earnings than at almost any point in history. In some countries, workers lose close to half of every additional dollar they earn once all taxes are accounted for. Yet despite this, public services feel worse, not better. Hospitals are overcrowded, housing is unaffordable, infrastructure is decaying, and basic government services are slower and less reliable. So what changed? To understand why high taxes no longer produce better lives, we need to look at how government spending has evolved. In the post-war decades, much of public spending went toward building new capacity. Governments constructed housing, highways, power plants, schools, and hospitals from scratch. These investments boosted productivity and created long-term economic growth, making it easier to fund generous public services. Growth and taxation reinforced each other. Today, governments are no longer building a new system. They are maintaining an old one. Much of public spending now goes toward preserving existing infrastructure, funding pensions, and paying for health care for aging populations. These costs rise automatically every year, regardless of economic performance. As a result, higher taxes increasingly go toward standing still rather than moving forward. Health care is one of the clearest examples of this shift. In many high-tax countries, healthcare spending has risen dramatically, yet outcomes and access have deteriorated. Waiting times are longer, staff are burned out, and patients struggle to receive timely care. This is not necessarily because governments are cutting funding. In many cases, healthcare budgets have grown faster than inflation. The problem is that healthcare itself has become far more expensive. Aging populations require more treatment. New medical technologies cost more. Drug prices are higher. Staff demand higher wages to keep up with living costs. Each additional dollar of tax revenue is absorbed by rising costs before it can improve services. The same pattern appears in infrastructure. Roads, bridges, rail networks, and utilities built decades ago are reaching the end of their lifespan. Replacing them is far more expensive than building them was in the first place. Regulatory complexity has exploded. Environmental reviews, legal challenges, and planning delays now add years and billions to major projects. Labor costs are higher, materials are more expensive, and political opposition is stronger. As a result, infrastructure spending buys less physical progress than it used to. Another major drain on tax revenue is debt. Over the past few decades, governments have increasingly relied on borrowing to fund spending. As debt has grown, so have interest payments. In many countries, a rising share of tax revenue is now devoted simply to servicing old debt. This money does not build schools, improve health care, or upgrade infrastructure. It flows to bondholders, often wealthier individuals and institutions, transferring income from taxpayers to asset owners. High taxes increasingly fund past obligations rather than future improvements. At the same time, economic growth has slowed. In the second half of the 20th century, productivity growth was strong. Economies expanded rapidly, making it easier to fund public services without raising tax rates. Today, productivity growth is weaker across most advanced economies. Innovation continues, but it no longer translates into broad-based gains in output per worker. Slower growth means governments must raise taxes more aggressively just to maintain existing services. High taxes also interact with labor markets in ways that reduce incentives. When marginal tax rates are high, additional effort is less rewarding. Over time, entrepreneurship and risk-taking become less attractive. While high taxes are often justified in the name of fairness, the result can be stagnation rather than equality. Workers feel squeezed between rising costs and shrinking rewards, even as governments collect more revenue. Housing further complicates the picture. In many high-tax countries, restrictive planning laws limit housing supply. Governments collect substantial tax revenue, yet fail to address the housing shortage. As prices rise, younger workers spend more of their income on rent, reducing their ability to save and invest. High taxes combined with high housing costs leave little room for upward mobility, especially for those without family wealth. This creates a growing sense of unfairness. Young workers pay high taxes to support systems they struggle to access. Middle-income families fund services that feel overstretched or unavailable. Meanwhile, older generations who benefited from decades of growth and asset appreciation are often protected by pensions and property wealth. The promise that high taxes would create shared prosperity no longer feels credible. It is important to be clear about what this does not mean. Taxes themselves are not the problem. Countries with strong institutions, efficient governments, and sustained growth can still deliver high living standards with high taxes. The issue is that in many places, the conditions that once made high tax systems work no longer exist. Aging populations, slow growth, rising costs, and high debt have fundamentally changed the equation. As a result, governments face an uncomfortable choice. They can raise taxes further, risking stagnation and backlash. They can cut services, undermining the social contract. Or they can borrow more, pushing the problem into the future. None of these options restores the original promise that higher taxes lead to better lives. The deeper problem is that many public systems were designed for a different era. They assumed younger populations, faster growth, cheaper infrastructure, and lower debt. Trying to sustain them without reform requires ever higher taxation just to maintain declining outcomes. This is why people feel like they are paying more and getting less. High taxes once bought progress. Today, they often buy maintenance, debt service, and delay. Without fundamental reform to how governments spend, invest, and grow their economies, simply taxing more cannot restore prosperity. And that leaves a final question hanging over the modern world. If high taxes no longer guarantee better lives, what replaces the old social contract?